mentioned three components there. You have compliance, fairness, and transparency. So let's start with, I think, is probably the easiest of these three, which would be compliance.
Mhm.
Compliance is coming. Regulation is coming, right? The Biden administration has announced a task force a few months back, and I think a week ago, their Office of Management and Budgeting also came out with policy around governance and risk. So regulation in this field is definitely coming. So I think when we're looking at vendors and we're looking for companies like Eightfold, are they open to regulation? Are they opening up? Now, they're not going to open up our IP, but are we going to be forthcoming about how um, our algorithms are working and what they're trying to solve for? I think is really critical when making some of these decisions. Now, that leads me to fairness, right? I think when you look at AI companies and you look at some companies that have gotten in trouble in the past, right? They've gotten into trouble because the size of their data sets weren't robust enough. And if you're only strictly using your data set in an AI model, it's inherently rife with bias. So, one of the things that we talk about at Eightfold and is really a common best practice for any AI company out there is the larger your data set and the more different sources your data is coming from, the more it kind of works bias out of the system, right? So when you look at our model, for instance, we ingest your data, we ingest publicly available data, and then we're also modeling that, and we remove all the PI, obviously, but we're also modeling that against all of our other customers' data. So we have over 1.5 billion data points to help us distill down to our AI model and our recommendation engines, right? And that's just very, very robust. And that's how you can help remove some of the bias from your organization is taking some of your data and looking at that versus trends in your field, outside of your industry, across the globe, and that helps drive fairness. Now, as far as transparency, yeah, any organization you work with in the AI space should be open to this, right? They should have plenty of spots on their websites where they're talking about fairness and transparency. And if they're not willing to do that with you during the process, I would really urge you to take a step back and talk to some other vendors, because this is a really key component, right? There's so much talk around AI right now, and I think there's some things that are just, and I think there's some things that are hyperbole, and I think some things have gotten out of control. When you look at it from an HR perspective, right, we should be using this to really level the playing field, right? Well, one of the things we talk about at Eightfold in fairness is, in a perfect world, we'd love to get rid of the resume, right? What do we care what school you went to? Do you have the skills we're looking for to do this job or not? Right. And I always think back to, my parents were both in the military. They didn't have formal 4-year careers. But they went in the military, they came out, they found jobs. They struggle in today's world. They're in their 80s now. So when we talk about fairness and transparency, right, what we try to do is we try to level that playing field and say, okay, whether you went to Cal State University or Stanford, um, that's great, but let's look at the skills you have. Let's look at how you've used those skills in the past. Let's look at some of those skills adjacencies. And that's where AI really comes into help, is not just looking at the written word and the written resume, but looking behind the curtain. So, when you talk about all of those components, whether it's compliance, we know that that's happening. Whether it's fairness, I think the robust data sets is really what helps. And then transparency, making sure you're working with a vendor that explains, hey, this is how our AI is working. Here's how we're driving fairness, right? We're using equal opportunity algorithms. We're removing PI. We're only looking at skills and data and job titles. All of those things should go into your decisions when talking to vendors and trying to scope out which AI solution is right for you in the HR space.